right, welcome. Um, we are live, and I'm very happy to be here. I'm Scott Blossom, and I want to thank Miranda Viorst for supporting me to set this up. And I'm really looking forward to, um, fielding questions. And I have a couple of, little comments to start with, and hopefully, hi, Lori. Oh, good. Would everybody that is coming on board please chat, because that's my one link to knowing who's out there and what's going on. So uh, great to great to see you, Lori. Um, and then the other piece here, can everybody hear well? So maybe Miranda or Lori, somebody comment to tell me that the sound is good. Hey, Carson. All right. Good to see you. Nice. Hey, Christina. So far, it's all friends. It's always, and Nicole. Hey, good to see you here too. Claudia. Liliana. Aw. Mexico City's in the house. And, okay, good. Thanks, Christina and Lori, for confirming that the sound is good. And yeah, it's always nice. Miranda and I were just talking about how nowadays we all need more community than ever, and it's the hardest thing to really cultivate in a kind of really human way, in the sense of getting hugs and being around other people, and the inspiration that you get from all of the sensual input that you get from humans. And so I've been happy that on these kind of live events, something can happen that creates a kind of intimacy and a kind of depth. And but I also think one of the ways to do it is to ask for everybody who's in the audience to chime in. And maybe a good way to start um, is for us, if folks feel comfortable, put a word in. How you doing? And feel free to register hurt and pain and confusion if that's your truth right now, because I'm here to hold space for that, and I'm sure everybody else is too. So um, yeah, how you doing? In the meantime, I'll make a couple of comments about today and what's going on. So in a couple of days, we're going to start our 3-month Tending the Inner Fire winter course. And it's going to be one Ayurveda class a week with practices and teachings from Ayurveda, and one yoga class a week. All right, Clay, good to see you. Bom bom haribol to you too. Thank you, Dilly, for letting us know that you're feeling. Oh, thanks, Gregory. Thanks for letting us know that you're feeling anxious. Oh, hi, Diane. Thanks for joining from Kauai. Yes, and Elizabeth is registering that she's feeling challenged with cold and dark winter. Yes, it's been nice and rainy here. Judy, all right. You're feeling a mixed bag of fear, anger, shame, and delicious foods right now. Gosh, I can so relate to having that experience very recently. I'm not experiencing it at this very moment, but I have. Um, and that's good stuff to touch on. Thank you. Gus family stuff. So happy to see you from Pennsylvania. Feeling so. Yeah. And from Heather. Thank you, Heather. Challenge with cold and dark winter. Me too. Yeah. I'm in a state of transition from Christina, purposefully unmoored and freshly committed to doing some deeper dredging. So I feel tender and raw, also open and ready. Beautiful. Joanna. Hi, Joanna. Good to see you again from Winter Haven, Florida. If Florida is a winter haven for many people, and I didn't know there was actually a place called Winter Haven, so I love that. Met you at the Telluride Festival and learned so much. Yeah, thanks. And Helen. Hi, nice to see you again, Helen. Yeah, looking forward to the course too, and having you with us again. And Lori's going a little stir crazy, stuck at home, but also feeling blessed to have your health. Yeah, I think a lot of us feel that. I definitely feel that too. I just took a nice walk before this with my family in the sunset, and that was beautiful to feel strong and healthy. And luckily in California it's been raining, which makes it darker and colder, but when you live in California, like I have my whole life, anytime it rains, I get very happy because it's such a dry state. Riding the waves of light and dark, tight and open. Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Nani. Vanessa, feeling hopeful, never so happy to put a year behind me. Thanks, Vanessa. Good to see you. And please say hello to your family for me, too. And yes, I get that. And that's kind of what I want to start with some comments. Brian says, I missed Esalen. Yes, I know. We just realized this time for the last 12 years, at basically exactly this time, we've been at Esalen. And that's a wonderful pilgrimage, annual pilgrimage to do. And this year we didn't get to. And so we were missing it too, although it was beautiful to be in the Bay Area. I got to surf on New Year's Eve, or New Year's Day morning. Really fun. The water's real cold. Also, would love to hear advice about protecting the voice. Thanks, Helen. Good. That's a great place to start. And I think I'm going to dive in and start to make a couple of opening comments, which is now that, winter is here, and we're kind of just getting into it. The metaphor of tending our inner fires is, like I said, what we're doing in this course that's just coming up. And I want to keep that in the frame, because that's where I'm at, definitely, is thinking about how do we tend the inner fire. And there's so many important ways and beautiful symbolic ways to think about fire, of course. And one of the things that I think coming out of this year, like Vanessa echoed, coming out of this year, I think it's really, all right, Saul's here. Sorry, I got interrupted, but I'm so happy to see Saul's name. Jay Ganesha to you, brother, as well. Thanks for sharing and caring. Ayurveda and natural medicine hold the keys for health and balance. Yes, Saul and I are very much of the same opinion when it comes to that. And I'll dive into that a bit too. But, just to sort of start with a comment, when the rest of the year, the metaphorical fire of the universe in the northern hemisphere is stronger. The wintertime is defined as the ebb of fire in the year. It's the time when the firelight is at its dimmest, which is one of the reasons why we have celebrations to remember the outer ways to promote light on the inside. Things like Hanukkah is a great example. Many different celebrations at the solstice, etc., utilize light, partly because it's a dark season, but because we actually absorb, digest, assimilate light when it's abundant in our external environment. And firelight and candlelight and sunlight are incredibly important, not only for sort of the emotional effect of having light around us, but there is just a cascade of biological effects, including sleep regulation, wound healing, skin health, pain perception. So even if you go outside in the wintertime, and this will be my first recommendation, which is if you're in the northern hemisphere, if you're in the equator, or the southern hemisphere, you're getting plenty of sun, and you can produce enough vitamin D by getting regular midday sun on 40% of your body for as long as it takes for that sunlight to kind of, make your skin tingle. You never have to burn to create vitamin D. You just go out and wait until you feel the warmth of the sun creating a kind of that pleasant tingling sensation. But in the winter, it's much harder. It's a trickier thing. And so I do advocate that folks think about taking vitamin D. There's a lot of opinions about how much is too much or the right amount. I have currently settled on the idea that for adults, about 10,000 a day through, say, the months of from mid-December until mid-February, do a couple months where you're taking 10,000 IUs a day, is a good way to get your levels up to and maintain a healthy amount. And that it's challenging to get into vitamin D toxicity area. You can, which is why I also recommend that you just do it for the 2 months and you don't try to just do that every day of your life. And once the spring starts to really come on, the sun will be stronger and you can start to utilize other methods. And with vitamin D, because it's fat soluble, it doesn't rise and fall as fast. So once you've kind of primed it up with some supplementation, it will stay there. But again, vitamin D is a lot like sunlight in the sense that it has so many different effects on the body in the sleep realm, in reproductive health, in mood, in immunity. Of course, I think many of you are aware that some of the primary research around what supplements are particularly effective with COVID has been around vitamin D, and really excellent proof that people who have too low levels will be much more likely to have the most serious experiences with their health with COVID infection. And I have a couple of friends who are ER nurses and doctors. And you know, hearing from folks on the front line has given me a lot of respect for how idiosyncratic it seems to be, who gets the most damage from COVID. Of course, if somebody has pre-existing conditions, especially ones that involve systemic inflammation like diabetes or systemic arthritis or you name it. Think of your favorite, you know, not your favorite, that was kind of a dark joke, but basically some of the main things like heart disease, being overweight, that plague Americans and Western, you know, people in Western countries in general, that will predispose you to be more likely to have complications, very serious complications. But occasionally folks who don't fit that description also have had a very hard time and with COVID infection. And so I think it just behooves all of us to do what we can to stay really strong. And as Saul beautifully put in the comment box, really at some level my commitment, and I know in my experience and over my whole life, I haven't required conventional medicine, mostly because I'm very committed to listening to my body and sourcing the foods that I eat and the practices that I do and the company that I keep, resourcing those things in a way that's very wholesome. And that extends beyond my own concern for my health. It also extends into recognizing that when I am cultivating generosity and patience and kindness and prayerfulness in my day, I will naturally extend the health that my body may have and create a field and a culture of health around me. And so I really, you know, recommend that we all get outside, and not only get outside, but get to places where the earth is being cared for and respected, and find ways to create rituals to honor the earth, because the earth is really our big immune system. It's not just our little immune systems, and COVID is not some kind of just aberration in the field of infectious disease. It is, I believe, a symptom of larger imbalances that we have created through man-made means. And so while we can protect ourselves from it, and we should, part of the healing is to take a moment and to really examine and promote behaviors and activities that will spread the wellness, and that it goes to the more than human elements in our world as well. And in fact might be even more important to remember the more than human elements, because that basis is the larger body that we all share, being humans on this planet. So one really quick Lori Wagner, symptom of a larger ambulance is yes. And so along those lines, the metaphor that I wanted to bring in about tending the fire is that when you have a fire going, the fire can be really strong and all the fuel is burning and everything is good. And then you get to the place where the fire burns down. And then you have ash. And metaphorically, ash is when something has burned itself out. It has, all that's left is the essential residue. And so in mythological terms, the ash work is whenever you come to a place in your life when you realize that your dreams or your relationships or your activities that you may have aspired to, that they've changed in a way that's kind of irreparable. And so there's a diminishment in it, and there's a lot of grief in recognizing that, oh, this thing that I thought was happening has changed in a way where I can't go back. There's nothing to reclaim exactly. And I feel like we're in that kind of cultural moment right now, which is that we're on a social justice level, on the environmental level, just on a personal level, we're all doing ash work right now. And I want to kind of qualify that because that's a bit poetic. But ash work is when you become willing to do the cleanup work, because it's beautiful to have a big blazing fire and celebrate the light and the heat of it. But then really, and I have through my mentor had the great privilege of worshiping fire ritually, honoring fire in ritual formats for more than 2 decades. And one of the most beautiful parts of it to me is the way that you take care of the ash. There's a very strong commitment to, when the fire is burned down, you try to burn the fire so that it's all ash at the end. That's the best outcome. And so this is one of those parts in our human psyche that I think is worth taking note of as well, is that in nature, a good fire will burn something completely down to ash. And then ash itself is actually a wonderful fertilizer. So as I'm collecting the ash, I usually eat some of it, because you can, provided that you haven't been burning something like plastic or rubber or something like that. But if you're burning wood and ghee and sugar and sesame seeds and rice and fragrant spices and the things that you kind of traditionally offer to a fire that you're worshiping ritually, when you get to the end of that experience, the ashes, ideally, you've taken care of it in the ashes. It's almost entirely ashes. And then you have that very fine, white, powdery ash. And that is wonderful to eat. It's actually, excellent for your gums. It's excellent for your GI tract. When somebody takes activated charcoal, that's essentially ash. And so ash works exactly the same way, but you have the benefit of having potentized the ash with your good intentions and your prayers that you have made to it. And then what you do is you actually collect it up and you put some water or something on it to kind of neutralize it, and then you give it back to the ground. In the places where it goes, it becomes a kind of fertilizer. It's very alkaline, but it's very enriching for the earth and the soil. And so to continue this metaphor, doing ash work, when you're really taking stock of the way things have changed radically in whatever aspect of your life, you have the opportunity there to really do something new. That's really the benefit. It can become the fertilizer for the next step. And it's not as good of a fertilizer if the wood has not burned to ash, because you can definitely pour a bunch of charred wood pieces on the ground too, but it takes much longer for it to disintegrate and to be usable by the earth, whereas ash itself is almost immediately integratable by the earth. And that same principle is true for us psychologically. So even though I know all of us are so ready to have more human connection, to have more possibility in our lives, and that the heaviness and the intensity of the just deluge of truths, heavy truths that have come through this year, my personal practice at the moment is very much to continue to sift those ashes with great love and great care, because that is where the medicine gets mixed from. That's where the the possibility for nourishing a really vibrant, authentic new vision for yourself comes from, and that psychologically it's very humble work, and that humility is what serves you in this case. And so as we all go through that, I hope that was an interesting, kind of reflection. And I'd love to just launch into continuing to talk about how we can serve our own internal fires through the winter season, and particularly in the sense of, or I should say, not limited to the sense of our digestive fire, but also the fire of vision, the fire of relationship, because Ayurvedic medicine is a multidimensional medicine, and that's definitely the way that I think about it. And so it's the way I've been taught to think about it, and it's the way that Ayurveda is construed. So let's. I would love to have today's discussion be maybe more open-ended around multidimensional fire tending and ash work. So and just from who I can see who's in the audience already, it's such a wonderful. I wish I could hug all of you. And I really am excited to hear, because there's a lot of wisdom holders in the group that have chatted. So thank you for showing up, and let the discussion begin. And I'll try to be get to as many questions as possible. And I love your comments and your own suggestions. So I'll amplify voices with my own by reading whatever you write in the chat. And Liliana is mentioning as well, I love that she also loves rituals and puts some of the ashes in the earth for recycling. Yeah, thank you. Christina's sending hugs with capital letters, which means, I think, hugs for everybody. I had a friend yesterday that I took a socially distanced walk in the hills here in Berkeley with, and she made a point to say that she's practicing giving herself like really luxurious self-hugs, because we kind of came up, and lately I've been doing this thing like from 10 feet away, like I'm hugging you from 10 feet away, and she's like, yeah, I love that, and I've been doing like where I do this kind of swoony thing, and which I thought was really funny and so true and deep. So thanks for invoking hugs, Christina. So and I'm all ears. I've brought some text this time too. I have one great book, if you don't have it, is Dr. Ladd's book of Ayurvedic home remedies. It's written for lay people, and I can honestly say that this is a book I use in my clinic, because as a general practitioner, sometimes I get things that I haven't seen very much or at all, and I really value that book. So I may use that to answer any questions that are curveballs for me, or maybe better amplified. Okay, so thoughts on adding 1 to 2 tablespoons of apple cider vinegar with the mother daily to my food regimen. I'm not sure what "with the mother daily" means, but and so feel free to clarify. But absolutely, apple cider vinegar actually this time of year, it's really the spring, when fungal infections and funguses that don't like us, not medicinal mushrooms, for example, so apple cider vinegar has a wonderful way of helping to keep fungal populations in balance in the system. One detail is I always advocate that you mix it down with water. I take about a tablespoon a day. I usually do include that. I've been doing that lately with some minerals as well in the mornings. And but I also water it down. It's also very good to take if you're having any kind of, if you notice that your digestion is producing more gas, or you just don't feel like your digestive fire is as strong, it's excellent to put in a couple or a tablespoon of apple cider vinegar and a few ounces of water right before you eat, because it helps to stimulate acids, and it'll just promote digestion. The winter time in general is excellent for including something like vinegar, because it's a little spicy and sour and just a little warming. And so those kind of things just help to dilate all the digestive activities in the body. So it's one of our oldest medicines, and the unfiltered apple cider vinegar is great. So that's just a few thoughts. Lori is bouncing back to vitamin D. We take 5,000 a day each, and I wondered two things. Are there any negative side effects by increasing to 10,000? Any other way besides sun and supplements to increase our vitamin D? So if you've been taking 5 for a while, and if it's easy to get a blood test to find out whether your levels are adequate, because if you've been doing that for a while, that might have actually promoted you having enough vitamin D, and then you wouldn't need to go up to 10,000 a day. There's no problem with it, especially if you need it, though. The body's not going to go through any shock by going from that 1 dose to the 10,000 dose. But it's good to find out, where you're at, if you're, especially if you've been supplementing vitamin D for a long time, and it's possible that you actually have, satisfied your body's needs by that supplementation. And in that case, you wouldn't need to go up, and you could even take a break for a while, because it's like with anything else, it's not necessary to supplement if your tissues are replete with what they need. And so along those same lines, to your second question, any other ways besides sun and supplements to increase vitamin D? Not really that I know of, but something like ghee, for example, grass-fed, really high-quality ghee, is a good source of vitamin D. So those kind of when you're eating foods like fatty foods that from animals that are eating grass, the vitamin D vitamin D is abundant, relatively speaking, in those foods. But I don't use ghee as a supplemental form of vitamin D, just because you have to digest it, and having too much ghee is not a great idea, even though ghee is rich and wonderful and nourishing. Right, Christina, what is your preferred recommendation to flush inflammation caused by rich, sugary holiday foods? Well, that's a great question. And so the first answer, of course, is abstinence. I was a teenager in the 80s, so I got a whole bunch of Nancy Reagan just say no messaging when I was at that tender age. So just say no. Say no to further rich, sugary holiday foods, at least for a while. And then number 2, one of the old school ways and it's one of my preferred because it's so easy and accessible, and you can do it in multiple ways, is drinking tea or hot water. I'm having Tulsi tea, but what I did all day today was I had hot water in a thermos, and I was just pouring hot water every 10 to 15 minutes. I would have about an ounce or 2 ounces of hot water, and I'd sip it a little bit for 5 or 10 minutes. That in and of itself is one of the best flushes, primarily because, one, you're hydrating yourself, but more importantly, when you're constantly putting a non-sugary beverage like an herbal tea or hot water that's warm, it really helps to counterbalance the winter coldness. So it warms you on the inside. It helps to counterbalance the cold influence on kind of contracting your system, and contracting, most importantly, the flow of your lymphatic system. So when you're having regular, hot water or tea, and this could include, something like, like a tea, like pu'er tea or oolong tea or green tea, especially if you're having it loose leaf and you steep it enough times that you've steeped out all the caffeine. Tea is an incredible balm for the human body and for the digestive tract. And I know, knowing you personally, if you tolerate tea, having a loose leaf tea where you just steep it 10, 20 times in water, that'll just enhance its effect on helping to move inflammation out of your body. But the most important thing about it is it really helps your lymphatic system to move freely and to move well, and that the lymphatic system associated with your digestive tract is the seat of your immune system. And so it's the immune system's primary expression is inflammation. So whenever there's inflammation, there's an immune response. If you want to try to reduce an immune response or an inflammatory response, flushing the system with small amounts of hot water and tea through the day is one of the best ways to do it. That's my preferred method, and I definitely, and even in Chinese medicine, they say if you get poisoned by anything, tea, meaning like pu'er or green or oolong or something like that, any kind of tea, drinking a quantity of it, mild tea, not a super dense, kind of concentrated tea, flushing the system with tea is one of the best ways to do it. So thank you for asking that. That's an important one. And for all of you pu'er heads, and I know Judy is a pu'er lover like myself, it's really important to go through where you have the period, that first pour, or first 5 pours if you're using a little teapot, where it will be a little caffeinated, it'll be very dark, but to continue to drink it as the tea lightens up, and drink it until there's no color to it at all. Then you've really kind of done the ritual of being with the tea leaves, as it were. So that's my extended answer to that. Thank you. Mother is the beneficial bacteria which comes with apple cider vinegar. Thanks. Okay, good. Thank you for clarifying that, Gregory. And absolutely, I'm glad that you're getting to have the probiotic-rich version of the ACV. I wonder if you made that. I think you're in Canada, and I know Canada has a good apple season, so I wonder if you're having a nice local one, or you even made it yourself. And then there's Clay. All right, Mr. Clay, what comes up for me is the idea of tending to my longevity fire, meaning having the fortitude to continue with the drudgery, in quotes, especially as we are mostly home, online, etc. I try to take it as a retreat, but that doesn't stick long. Thank you. Yes, I'm feeling you entirely. I go through exactly the same thing, and have at some level, especially with, it's been sweet. I have a 12-year-old son, and part of the ritual now has been that we do something. We used to never take walks. He likes to play sports, and he likes to be really active, and so we would do those kind of things. But now, just because of the daily routine, it's like some days it's like, yeah, let's just take a walk, and we'll walk slowly, and we just crack jokes and goof around. It's sweet. So I think the drudgery side of routine is indicating that you may have some Vata dosha prominent in your system, and so Vata loves novelty and to change things up, and so I would recommend, from the side of your comment too, not that you're asking for advice. I love the transparency and the vulnerability in your comment, because I think a lot of us experience that. But I would recommend that, really just kind of, you might even do a little thought experiment. It's like, okay, here's the daily routine stuff that's not negotiable, and here's the stuff that I have a lot of room for creativity, maybe leaving it out some days, bringing it in some days. And as you start to develop those 2 lists, you may start getting ideas about how the non-negotiables can be done in several different ways, because it's so important to adapt what you're doing really in respect to what it is you're feeling on the inside, and that would be physically as well as psychologically, and what the conditions are in the outside. And when when being kind of homebound can have a stagnant kind of feeling, you can counter it with qualities of spontaneity, qualities of novelty and creativity that you dredge from the inside. So dredging those things on the inside will help to counter the drudgery on the outside. So that's one answer. Okay, Nani. I am more tuned into the dampness, composting plants, breaking down in winter as I walk out here daily in Point Reyes. Yes, earth magic. That's right. Point Reyes is such a deep, composty kind of place. I don't think of fire and ash as part of winter. Can you speak to this? Yeah, that's such a good point. The way I would put it is this way, is that we're coming to a dissolution part of the year. This is the part of the year when life comes to an ebb and everything kind of pulls in. And that composty degradation is actually ashes, but it's damp. It's the way that nature creates ash without an actual elemental fire. But what happens within all of that breakdown is exactly the same oxidative process that is the fundamental chemical process that's in any kind of fire. So I think it's such a beautiful, that's so interesting that you brought that up because I never really thought of it that way, but composting is oxidation. And a burning elemental fire is an oxidative process. So in some ways, you're just existing in a damp Scotland-like climate there. And so you're seeing it in that damp expression of fire, where the dampness is dominant and the hot, dry aspects of fire are not really able to show forth, but they're in there in the mix. And so one of the ways that you can counterbalance that environment too for yourself is just to make sure you're including lots of good warming spices in the meals that you cook, to make sure you're getting plenty of cardiovascular exercise, even if it's just, walking daily, to keep the air element moving in the system because it has a drying effect. The spice of the good warming cooking spices will help to promote your digestive fire. And like Gregory suggested, something like apple cider vinegar is one way in a place that's damp because it's already a more fungally rich place. It's a good way to just keep kind of balancing out the fungal environment in your microbiota. All right, Helen. Does the ACV plus water need to be warm, including before a meal? It doesn't. It doesn't. It could be either way, but if you know that your digestive fire is feeling a little bit weak, then having either warm or lukewarm water is a great idea. Yeah, and you can also put a pinch of ginger in it. That'll also kind of supercharge it a little bit. You could crack a little black pepper in it. You could add a pinch of cayenne pepper. All of those things will help to spice it up a little bit if you know you're wanting to stoke your digestive fire. And by the way, of course, this is exactly the kind of process we're going to be going through in this course coming up that starts Thursday. So just want to plug it again because it is starting. We've got a great group forming. So if you're interested, spread the word. That would be a great benefit to me in my community. So now with Dilly, okay to dilute with the Ayurvedic tea, apple cider vinegar with the cumin. Yeah, great. So thanks, Gregory. Absolutely. This is to the point I was making about ginger. This is a slightly more elaborate dilution of the apple cider vinegar, but I imagine it'll even actually be quite delicious to have the cumin, fennel, and coriander broth tea along with the apple cider vinegar. Definitely. One of the things I'm planning to do soonish, probably I promise before the middle of Feb, is to try to produce a book of purees and things where I've been getting very creative with using some boiled, very simple boiled vegetables along with some spices and just pureeing it very simply as part of my evening meal usually. And finding that it's making me able to incorporate a much wider range of spices because I'm not trying to cook with them. I'm actually using them in a mix of vegetables, and the vegetables are kind of sort of dynamic in terms of what's in the fridge and what needs to be consumed. And so I found that to be incredible. So I love your idea, Gregory, about diluting the apple cider vinegar with the CCFT. Jason Niemer. Wow, so good to see you, man. Are you down in Mexico too? What would you recommend for elbow joint healing, strengthening? I feel good now and I want to maintain it as I start training pull-ups and other heavy loads. Yeah, and I know that Jason does a lot of, Jason is one of the founders and the man of acro yoga. And so he does a lot of acrobatics and partner work, as well as sounds like some heavy training as well. And so in terms of the elbow, I know in my own experience the only time I've really gotten you could call it tennis elbow, was actually when I was in a period of time of playing a lot of music, and I learned that whatever technique I was using for strumming was not sufficient for the amount of playing that I was doing, and I started to get inflamed, and I had to rest. I had to rest it. So that just, I think, goes without saying, but it's important to put it out there that when you do train that way, um, make sure you're giving yourself plenty of rest time. Do short, intensive training sessions, not long, intensive training sessions, to help to try to avoid overusing that joint. And I know that in your case, it's also an occupational thing, so you may, in certain circumstances, not be able to do that as much. And so then it's something like you can, if you get one of those braces to be kind of preemptive for tennis elbow, that kind of thing will also help because of the way it stabilizes the tendon in the joint there, to prevent inflammation. And then, so those are a couple of examples. The other thing, of course, that I know you're savvy with is doing massage. And so really doing massage on the forearm, all around that joint, to kind of be able to tune into areas that might be muscle groups that might be overworking before they start to get inflamed. And then you can do some kind of focused sort of release work, is also a great way to prevent that. Great. Wow. Hey, Janice, long time no see. That's great to see your name. And I actually realized, too, that Helen had asked about voice. And so I'm going to go back to that briefly as I take a sip of water. So, and I know Helen is a professional singer. And so I know that you know a lot about training the strength of your voice. And I also know that you are, so I'm going to assume, kind of from an Ayurvedic perspective, that I'm not going to go into more general ideas about, voice and protecting the voice. But it's just good to acknowledge that in the wintertime, the coldness itself will, in the Ayurvedic terminology, weaken the voice. And so this is just kind of, it goes with the territory, and that's partly because of the constrictive quality. And then there's the other thing too, which is a lot of places in the winter are quite dry. And so the dryness will also have that effect. And so that combo, one of the best, it's kind of along the lines of what I was just recommending about using spices, is something like chai spices, along with something that's a naturally wholesome sweetener like honey or maple syrup, or jaggery if you have it available, is an excellent way to moisten the throat and to keep it healthy, because actually that combo of the sweet along with the spicy herbs helps to dilate, open up the circulation through the throat, and protect the throat from the dryness that is kind of endemic to wintertime, because cold and dry tend to go along together, because constriction is not, the constriction that cold creates is not like you put a blow dryer on somebody, but it's actually the constriction squeezes the juice out of the tissues. And then, so that's a couple suggestions there. It's kind of simple. I have been doing something lately in my yoga practice that's been beneficial too, where I actually have been, I'll take an inhale and I'll hold the breath in, and I'll gently puff my cheeks and gently puff down into my throat area. So it's like, and I'm not like overdoing it. I'm not trying to stretch my cheeks, but I actually am creating a little pressure down into the throat, and that has another effect where maybe if everybody wants to try it, just inhale and hold in, and then put that in there. It's like, and as you do it, as you start to feel a little bit of the pressure created by puffing your cheeks down into your throat, feel it into your chest, feel it into your belly as well. And puffing your cheeks is a nice exercise. It'll make your cheeks, open up circulation in your cheeks, and just kind of help the skin on your face too to be healthier. But you do it gently. So now Janice and Susan are both interested in sleep. The last Q&A we talked quite a bit about this, so you can also refer to that recording. And this is a really big one, and this is something that I'm going to cover pretty extensively in the winter course because wintertime is the sleep season. And it's also something that is, this is one of my observations, is that for a lot of people, they're in kind of a oxytocin deficit unless you're managing to really cuddle very effectively with animals and humans and whatever else you cuddle with. Your favorite fern or something, joking. Um, but it's that oxytocin and melatonin and serotonin have a very mutual relationship. And so it comes back to something like there's a lot of very basic things like, and again, I'll try to make this a very shorthanded list, but this kind of stuff is published everywhere too, so it's not like you have to just get it from me. But, the sleep hygiene through the day is really important. So having, for example, a good sine wave of activity and some rest and chilling out. And activity and rest, they're called ultradian rhythms. They're really important, and they have to do with your personal movement toward activity, productivity, and then needing to just chill out. And so maintaining that during the day is so key to ending up in the right place for sleep. Another thing that's really important that's not that well known is that actually getting some sunlight at the beginning of the day and at sunset is really, really important for those circadian rhythms and for actually cueing the body around creating the hormones that the body is going to need for being active during the day and then sleeping well at night. Not consuming any stimulants after at noon is a really good idea if sleep is challenging. We went into a whole thing about weighted blankets and using Hertz music and getting really warm. It turns out that one way that you stimulate oxytocin in a kind of self-generated way is to get really cozy and warm. Warmth itself creates a good oxytocin boost, and that will promote sleep, partly because it just puts your body into a space of stillness, appreciation, satisfaction. So those are a few suggestions, and then there's the glowing rectangles, which I know some of you are in the Midwest or even East Coast, and so I apologize. Thank you for your fortitude in getting on a screen to listen to this live broadcast, but in general, getting off of the glowing triangles by at least 2 hours before bed is a good idea too. And then you can do things like, in oiling the body. One really potent thing is to oil the body and then take an Epsom salt bath. That combo of oiling the body with a good wholesome seed oil like coconut or sesame or almond and then going in a bath that has the Epsom salts can be very beautifully sedative. So again, those are just a few suggestions. I'm not being sort of comprehensive, but there's so many different things. So also kind of tune into what it is you may need, and also recognize that right now, and this is why I started with my extended comment about that we're doing ash work right now as a culture, and I think a lot of us are doing ash work just because of the depravity of COVID and having to be in lockdown and not having our normal love and support systems and relationships have been disrupted, is that it's harder right now, I think. We just don't have a lot of the things that are there. And so one opportunity is that it's really putting the question, how can you really compassionately, patiently, lovingly be with it? And that is a super skill. It's very easy to say, and it's harder to do, but when you like the Native Americans have a saying that, the medicine is in the poison. It's in the difficulty. And so if not sleeping is happening, tune into the agitation, tune into the unsettledness, tune into the inability of the body or the mind to really settle and sleep. And, and trust that there is medicine just in that patient, loving act of getting with what exactly is in the content. So, moving forward, yes, Angela Wilson said yes, more about the winter course. Yeah, so the winter course is going to be, we're going to be taking 12 weeks to really examine fire in depth, the internal fire, the Agni from the Sanskrit. The internal fire, there's 13 internal fires from the Ayurvedic perspective, and all of them are relevant to be tended. And then, like tonight, for example, some of the things that I've mentioned have really been very much about the rasa, the juice of the body, and how to preserve and promote that. So there is a way that your digestive fire can be oriented to promote rasa. Also, in the wintertime, for having good immunity, it's very important that you have good, strong blood. So we're going to be going into the different tissues and the different way the digestive fire serves the different tissues. We're also going to look into how we create not only health rituals, but personal sacred rituals. So in the way that I was discussing my experience with having the privilege of worshiping the fire for a long time now, I also, I'm going to be talking in very kind of, you could say, more structural and general terms about what are the elements of a personal ritual and how that ritual can have a sacred and kind of spiritual intent. It can also be applied to more psychological needs, more physiological needs, so that we really will be in a fire ritual for 3 months together, and with this balance between yoga practices and then Ayurvedic perspectives on how you do that. So thanks for egging me on. And so then Liliana says, I love to make khichdi when I feel my colon is starting to protest, and also in these days after Christmas, but mung beans also cause me inflammation. Is there any other way? Or yes, an alternative to mild cleansing, nice eating like this. Yeah, so, everybody has to find out what legumes they can digest. Some people can't digest any of them. So if that's the case, then I suggest you look at something like quinoa. And quinoa is an excellent seed that can be used as a cleansing food, but you may not digest that. You could also look into using things like tapioca and root vegetables. There's a real wide range, and it would take a very long time to go deep into it, but just suffice to say that I would recommend that you think of what food feels the most soothing in your belly. And I know for a lot of people, a sweet potato is like that. Some people it's squash, some people it might be rice, some people it might be khichdi. You figure out whatever it is that you know it's really wholesome, and then what you do is you kind of make that one of the main things that you eat when you're kind of promoting some cleansing, and then just make sure to take advantage of including seasonal fruits and vegetables around it, including good cooking spices too, because cooking spices are kitchen medicine, and that's one of the brilliant things about Ayurveda in general, is that they really have a profound connection to the medicinal quality of cooking spices. Okay, so continuing to go down, thanks for that comment, Liliana, and question. Lori, it's Sean. Hi Sean, what are your thoughts on the overuse of the eyes and how this affects our internal fire? Yeah, great. So that's an excellent question, because the eyes are said to be the sense organ of the fire element, because this is where we register light. Nowadays, the eyes are being exposed to a particular kind of light too much maybe, and it has to do with computers and screens. Like we get certain bandwidths of light are really very abundant, so relatively few of us are having regular exposure to elemental firelight, but many of us are having extended exposure to other forms of light. So one way to think about it would be to try to make sure you vary the kinds of light that you're being exposed to within the day, and even within the process of being on screens, to really orient yourself where you're working outside, where you can look at the sky. In the daytime, blue light is really important. So blue light gets a lot of negative. It's really negative at night. That's the thing to really kind of dig into, maybe, is during the day, expose yourself to natural light. Screen light, because there's a lot of blue in it, is not as impactful in the daytime as it is at night. At night, that's when it's really useful to get a good pair of blue light blocking glasses, and if you're going to be on a screen, utilize them. In fact, I may come on next time with my large pair of blue blocking glasses that I use when I'm on screens at night, and they look I don't know, they look outer spacey, but they're wonderful, and they really help to prevent some of the problems I think that a lot of folks are facing by just having too much screen time. Okay, so I hope that's helpful. Well, I should say that when you're overexposed to one kind of light, what it does to the internal fire is it's like it overfeeds it one thing. It's like, it's nice to have a banana, but if you have 10 bananas, it might be a little difficult to digest. So in the same way, it's no problem to have a little bit of kind of the EMFs coming off of a screen or blue light. Most people can handle some, not everybody. Some people are extremely sensitive to it, and it's like kryptonite for them. And if that's the case, then you really have to research and look into light blocking technology to interface with screens. But if you're not one of those people, it's just kind of too much of something. So it's like you overate one thing too much. So try to vary things, and then also be sensitive to time of day, to when you expose your eyes. All right, Elizabeth is in Maine for the first winter after 18 years in the Virgin Islands. Wow. Yeah, so that's a big change. My body temp has been super low, which is unusual for me. This is you are bringing up the classic example of what's going on, which is the winter time. The outer world, especially in Maine, is cold. So then the inner world, in its wisdom, will heat up. The digestive fire will get stronger. But after 18 years in the Virgin Islands, where it's much more equatorial, your body actually is probably more often in the process of trying not to overheat, and in its wisdom will actually cool down the digestive fire and the body temperature. So you've actually acclimated to that environment, and that's why you're having this transition here. Meaning you're having a transition that is challenging because your body temperature is low. So obvious stuff. Bundle up, stay warm, wear extra layers, just promote the insulation of the body. Two of the primary herbs for increasing body temperature are ginger and cinnamon, which is great because they're delicious and you can cook with them. And then beyond that, it's like, again, making food that's well spiced and even a little spicy that will promote that quality within you. Because of my training in Chinese medicine, and I know that we probably have a number of vegetarians here, and I apologize ahead of time if you shriek when you hear the word lamb, but in Chinese medicine, they actually treat people that are cold with lamb. And you don't have to have a lot of it, but you have like lamb once a week for a month, where you make a stew out of it. And you might have, if you're a single person, you might have 4 ounces of lamb twice. So you have the stew 2 days in a row. And again, I apologize if anybody's being offended, but even in Ayurvedic texts, the doctors, my job is not to force my personal choices on anybody, and I have to be aware that when I have somebody who is a meat eater, that animal foods can be medicines, absolutely, and Ayurveda is not a vegetarian medicine either, but Chinese medicine is definitely not vegetarian medicine. They have a profound medicinal tradition with animal foods. So that's where that's coming from. And so that's a few examples, but I think the ginger cinnamon really bundle up idea is important. And then one more idea about this is kind of what I would call the fire and ice theme, which is get yourself really hot, like try to get to a sauna if you can, heat up, and then also start doing cold rinses at the end of showers, baths, and if you can get to a sauna, finish your sauna time with a cold rinse, like cold, not lukewarm, like actually, ideally, 60 degrees or less. It's going to feel bracing, but that also really opens up the circulation and it tells your digestive fire to pump up. And I do that all the time. Like I actually in Berkeley will have mornings that are just a few degrees above freezing, and when it gets rainy, I go out and I run the trails barefoot and all I wear is a bathing suit. And what happens is the coldness of it, some fire just turns on in the body, and it actually makes me stronger. I mean, if you went out and your immune system was compromised, you could get sick from that. But I always check in, and if I'm feeling good and feeling strong, it actually strengthens me to go out and be exposed to cold. I do cold rinses after the shower or cold plunges on a near daily basis too in the wintertime. And I am lucky enough to have access to a sauna that I use quite regularly as well. All right, Linda, just taking a few more because we're kind of at the hour here, and I want to, whoa, okay, there's a lot of comments. I'm going to blaze through this. Everybody come to the winter course. This is what we're going to do. We're going to talk. We're going to talk about things that are good to do. That's what we're going to do in the winter course. And I warn you, I mean, this could, I could be sinking my own ship here, but I will make recommendations like watching Rocky, the movie Rocky, as in the Italian Stallion, because I can't help it, and it's a great movie, and I have a 12-year-old son, and he just met Rocky Balboa, and he loved him too, so just got to put that in there. But, okay, so moving forward, how would I discuss the appearance of the tongue? Okay, so with the tongue, it's a complex science. Main thing you want to watch out for, there's a few things. Size of the tongue. Does the tongue look like it fits in your mouth normally? If it looks puffy, that's a sign that the digestive fire is weak. If the tongue looks shrunken, that's also a sign that that's more of a sign that you're being depleted of essence, more a depleted condition. Another thing is coating. Is the coating sort of a thin white coating, fairly even? You don't see patches that are bald on the tongue. If the tongue coating gets really thick, if it's thick and white, that's a sign that you have cold and damp. If it gets thick and yellow, that's a sign that you have heat and damp. And then let me think, another one would be, scallops are a sign of assimilation being not particularly strong. You can read, there's good maps online for the different organs on the tongue, and that's a whole another layer to it. But in general, pink, normally sized, not too thick of a coating, but also not lacking a coating, are what you're looking for. And if it starts to, the coating increases, start changing your diet to make it cleaner and lighter. If the tongue starts to puff up, start changing your diet to make it cleaner and a little lighter. But it's also wintertime, so you have to make sure you get enough calories, especially fat and protein calories, to stay warm. So that's the balance on that. All right, Erica, good to see you. Have been feeling my own personal and collective grief, which sometimes feels insurmountable, even with all my tools, but hearing your voice and words always is a soothing balm. Thank you so much. I feel exactly the same way. And I am happy to say that I feel the same way in both senses of what you're saying, is that I'm so lucky to have started to cultivate tools for resiliency, for adaptability very early in my life. And so now at this point, I see it more as an adventure to meet these really profound collective and personal levels of grief that are so real right now. And anybody who's not feeling grief, I think that you may have a very rosy attitude, but that there's nothing abnormal about grief and despair. It used to not be pathological to feel despair. It's a natural human, it's a human experience, and it actually makes you whole. It makes you turn from a person, from a younger to an elder. Like an elder is somebody that can hold wisdom because they've been wounded by the truth of mortality. And grief is always connected to something coming to an end, something shifting, some recognition that that which is either cannot live any longer or has already died. And I think that on the cultural level, we just recognize we're in the end game of some very powerful, racist, exploitive, extractive, brutal kind of dominating tendencies, and that in the process of accepting the change, there's a lot of grief in that, because we have to try to live into the new before there is a new, and a lot of the momentum is actually resisting what is probably going to be a sustainable and regenerative culture that will need to be born. And that's my personal opinion. Okay, so moving forward, muchas gracias, excellent feedback, thanks Clay, awesome answer, thanks. Elemental dance, damp ash, yes, the fungi are wonderful, thank you. I'm taking in the praise. All right, Jason's in San Diego. Hi Angela, good to see you. And then Liliana mentioned magnesium. Thank you for bringing that up. Magnesium is an excellent mineral to help us sleep, and we did go into that quite a bit in the last Q&A too. All right, Marla Lee, good to see you. Wondering, my hair is falling out more and more. I heard this can happen from eating too much cacao or cocoa. Can this be true? Please say no. Any tips? Okay, so this is another big subject. I haven't heard that, but cacao is a very, it has a particular nutrient profile, and like anything else that's powerful, it can, if you have too much of it, it's going to work against you. So suffice to say that if you know that you're a chocoholic or a cacaoholic at some level, you need to look at that. From the Ayurvedic, or I should say from the Chinese medical perspective, one of the key things is black sesame seeds for hair. Like if I had to recommend one food and one food only to promote good hair growth, it's black sesame seeds. The other thing is promoting the health of the blood. That's going to be, basically two facets help the blood. One is to make sure you're getting enough of the right kinds of exercise. And number two is to eat foods that tend to be red, like blood, brown, black, purple, like that they're that color. Like you have purple sweet potatoes, and you have red purple beets, and you have red purple cranberries, and you have brown dates, and you have black sesame seeds. Again, if you're not vegetarian, then flesh foods are also red before they're cooked as well. And so all of those things can go in. If you are vegetarian, just making sure that you're getting ample protein and getting sources of protein that are really digestible for you. And we're lucky nowadays. There's so many excellent vegetarian sources of protein out there, not only in whole forms, but in supplemental forms. And so you might need to do a little experimenting. One of my favorite sources of vegetarian protein has been seeds. Seeds tend to be very rich in protein, and so I make a point to ingest sunflower seeds, black sesame seeds, pumpkin seeds, flax seeds, hemp seeds, chia seeds very regularly, because the fiber is incredible, the nutrient profile is incredible, they're really high in magnesium usually too, and other minerals, and it's also a good protein source. And so lastly, iron deficiency can also lead to hair falling out. Hormone imbalances can lead to hair falling out. So vitamin D is implicated in all of those things as well. So you might want to check vitamin D as well. And so again, it's a bigger subject, and if it's really going on, make an appointment with me one-on-one, and I'll give you something really customized, because it's something that's reversible, and it's just a matter of getting down to the bottom of what it actually is. Meaning that there's many causes to it. It's hard to say, but thanks for your question, and I'll look into the cacao thing too. All right, Darcy, hi. Every year around this time, I start to feel cooped up, and I get the winter blues that lasts until spring. Fresh foods, new growth, new beginnings. Of course, this year, the sense of being cooped up is even stronger. Today was particularly tough because it was still a heavy day weather-wise. Is that Vata talking? What can I do to honor Vata, but also honor the season? What you're describing is a combo of Vata and Kapha. And it's also a kind of thing that sounds like you said it's heavy, so there's a lot of inertia in it. So finding ways to break up internal inertia, to break up external inertia, and again, this is where light therapy becomes really, really important. So basically, one thing to commit to is to get light within the first half hour of the day. Get your eyes exposed to, you're not looking at the sun, but you're looking in that direction, and you're letting that bright light touch the eyes, and then also watching sunset light. So just those two things are important. They're really useful to remember. Beyond that, again, it might not be a bad idea to check to see, how your, blood chemistry is, because sometimes that sets it off. If that's a lifelong tendency, there might be, other kinds of supplementation and things that you can use, depending on whatever medications you're taking or not, to help support your mood. Different things can work for different constitutions, and it's a much bigger question, but it's a good one, and that's also something that we're going to take more time with in this course that we're doing on tending our inner fire during the winter season. All right, Lori Wagner. Yay, Lori. So good to see your name. Thanks for hanging out. I've been using earplugs for sleep, and it's helped my sleep so much. I had no idea that I was so sensitive to sound. What an excellent point. I have been loving earplugs myself. I haven't been using them to sleep, but I've been doing some yoga nidra during the day. And meaning like conscious relaxation during the day, and that has been tremendous in terms of really feeling held. It's that combo of it gets real quiet and it gets real warm because I get under the heavy blanket, under the weighted blanket, and so thank you for that little tip. And it's funny how Spotify gives you, like, if you have Spotify, every year at New Year's they say, here's your 2020 playlist. This year was all minimal music. It was something about the intensity of everything. I kept really naturally being drawn to super spare, simple, beautiful kind of ambient / classical music. Like think Harold Budd, and think even people like Rai, artists who are doing, popular music that has that feel, Brian Eno, that kind of stuff. There's just so much incredible, devotional music that's very spare too. So thanks for that. Thank you, Jason. Good to see you. And then Miranda, there's a request there for putting a link up here. Feliz año to you too, sir. And let's check in. It's been forever. And so I hope Miranda did that. I'm incapable of putting the link up and continuing to answer questions. So Miranda, if you can put the link up in this chat, that'd be great. And how to find it. You can find the link at my website, www.drblossom.com. It's right there on the homepage. Right, Liliana, quinoa is okay. Good. Well, that's great. I would recommend using quinoa for your cleansing then. All right, Kendall, I live in a very humid area, Tulum. Beautiful. Lots of mold. Yes, it's triggered my asthma and inflammation. Any suggestions on what to do? All right, so Kendall, you are in an environment where the external qualities of that environment may be challenging for you. So what I would recommend as one thing is make sure that you actually make it so your bedroom if you know you're in an area where there's a lot of, humidity, and you can kind of sense that there might be mold in the air, in the physical environment around you, seal your bedroom, even though it's not great necessarily to not have a cool breeze or have, that cross ventilation. Get a really good air filter so that at least at night you're having an environment that is spore free. And you may be part of a small but very significant minority of people that are terribly sensitive to mold. And that's why it might be triggering that. So if you've fallen in love with Tulum, you're going to probably have to work at it a little bit to really try to set up an environment where you can limit the amount of exposures that you're having so it won't trigger you as much. But it does sound to me, with just this very simple description, and I could be wrong, that you're having that you have some innate mold sensitivities and they're being aggravated down there. And that's something you got to be careful. You can't just live with that. That will accumulate and start to be problematic if it goes on too long. Okay, I'm going to have to wrap it up here in a second. Thank you, Liliana. Thank you, Christina, for putting the link about blue light glasses. That's awesome. Warmer internal body, does this mean burning fat? Yes, it does. It means you're going to be, having more efficient digestion. Thank you very much, Miranda, for putting up the link. Elizabeth, interestingly, I've been eating lamb twice a month when usually a veg diet. That's so interesting that you were drawn to it. Wow, fascinating. Have you noticed, I'd love to hear if you've noticed any influence on your body temperature from it. What I would recommend, since you are imbibing that, make the Irish style, because that, Maine and Ireland have a lot in common, climate-wise. And so the spicing and the whole orientation of the way they do their lamb stew is very much a kind of food medicine configuration. Okay, so Gordy Roach. Thanks, Julie. I'm not sure. Okay, Carrie, what can be done for assimilation problems? Tongue scalloping. It's all the things about like really having foods that are easy to digest. So usually making sure you're preparing them with cooking spices. You're also cooking most of the things that you're eating, and you're being very sensitive to not overeating, and noticing how you feel with the various foods that you're putting in. All right, and then some more thank yous. Yeah, thank you for appreciating the ash work and collective grief, because it's been something that I've been, it's been resonating for me, and it's produced some very beautiful internal shifts and communion with grief, and to honor it. All right, thank you, Linda. Thank you, Liliana. Thank you, Swamini. And all the best to you too. Christina, when you say get ample protein, okay, the amount of protein for each person, like per grams, it depends on body weight, but I'm somebody that's a fan of like, it's somewhere in the neighborhood between, say, at the low end, 75 grams a day, and at the high end, 120. Protein, when it's in excess, is very hard on the kidneys. A lot of people are eating way too much protein. Another thing to be aware of is that protein is something that we can digest about 12 grams of it per meal. 20 if you're eating slowly. And so if you're having any supplemental protein sources, I don't usually go over 10 grams with those kind of sources, because you're just not going to absorb it. And so it doesn't mean you couldn't have some and then have some more later on, and then really supplement that way if you need to. But it's really important just to acknowledge that there's a problem with protein in our culture, and then there's a flip side of some folks are not getting enough protein, especially if they're eating a very high carb diet. All right, thank you, Vanessa. Please say hi to Ben for me too. It's great to see you. Okay, Susan, thank you for the question on CBD. That's a bigger one. We're going to do this regularly. I'm sorry to not say I'm going to go into it tonight, because I would love to give a better answer, and I don't want to give a really quick and fast answer. So please come to the next one. We'll probably do another one in a couple weeks. Forgive me for not going into that answer. Anjali, good to see you, and Alok. Hugs to you guys. And Claudia, thank you. good to see you in the crew here, Marla. Good to see you, and thank you too. And then Elizabeth, thank you for. I'm looking forward to seeing you on Thursday. Yeah, love to everybody, and stay well, and spread goodness and wellness and love in all directions, especially to the more than human world. So good night, everybody.